is an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Unspoiled, covering The Dark Tower. Book 6, Song of Susannah. Stanza 13, in which I hate everything about this Dixie Pig place. I don't want to be here. It's so much worse than I thought. I hate it. I hate it. And Jake and Callahan don't even get there by the end. Guys, I'm mad about it. Welcome to Unspoiled. Oh my God. I just was waiting and waiting for the cavalry, and they never came, and it made me so angry.
I remember my first time reading this going like, y'all are running out of time in this book to show up and do something. But instead it's a real Wastelands kind of ending. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, you know, and on the one hand, I'm not even like saying it was a bad decision, because I think it did end in a good spot. But I don't know. I feel like the way that these books are set up, I keep waiting for shit that doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
Yep. Well, shit's gonna happen. Don't you worry about that.
I mean, I'm sure, but like, you know, when? Because at the moment, I don't know. I'm just feeling really frustrated, and
I understand.
You know? And it's not even like I didn't enjoy this. It's just that I enjoyed it thinking that it was the lead up to something, and then it turned out to be that was the main event. And as the main event, I feel like it falls short. Do you get what I mean?
I feel like, knowing what I know about the next book, I feel like I know where I would have ended this book.
Okay.
And it's not here.
Okay.
But, you know, maybe he just didn't know. You know, he didn't know what was going to happen after this and decided that was as good a point as any, and if that's the case, then sure, I guess. But yeah, it's definitely, it's frustrating. Mm-hmm. You know, like I totally understand that it's frustrating, and yeah. I mean, I don't know what else to say, like, for all that I appreciate this book, and it's like, you gotta love that, you know, you go from the ending of the book being the baby finally coming, like the baby finally being born. That's the last moment of the book. And then you have to read the coda, which is like, I mean, a brief history of Stephen King,
the coda,
in his own words.
It feels like the conversation that he has with Roland and Eddie all over again. Like, we get a little bit more about, you know, how things go after, but none of it is anything that I felt like I needed to know or was important. Like, the only thing... Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, it's like, it's very conversational for something that's supposed to be a diary.
Which, that doesn't bother me because I write like that in my diary.
Okay,
fair enough. Write as if somebody's going to be reading this shit because I'm paranoid like that.
Oh God, do you really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense. I have never nor would ever do that. I don't think. So...
And that's not to say that I lie in it, because I can't think of a time when I've lied to my diary. But
it just feels like speech, not writing. It just feels like speech. And I think it feels like it's written in the exact same voice as he wrote himself in that scene with Roland and Eddie, which I think is why it feels like that scene.
Right.
Is that is that King being like, good on him for having a consistent voice for writing himself, or, does it not feel like a diary, I guess, is what I was getting at.
It feels like the diary of a writer. You know what I mean? Like somebody who's gonna, like, he's, not only is he somebody who skirts around that style in the way that he writes himself. He doesn't quite do it like that, but you can feel it here and there. But he, I think, is somebody who was aware that if he got famous enough, this kind of thing would be published, like, or at least seen by more eyeballs. And I feel like if you gain any amount of success, you got to start being, like, cognizant that this could. I may die in a way where I have no control over what happens to this stuff later. Because I think a lot of us are like, well, nobody better read my diaries. Well, who the fuck is going to stop them if you aren't around to do it? And so unless you plan on finishing up your journal and then throwing it in the fireplace, that's just probably going to happen. And that's what I'm the most aware of.
I should probably know that I don't journal or diary, so there's also that.
Yeah, I find it to be great, like, dumping ground kind of thing. I used to do it even more than I do now. But the thing about the way that this is written is that all it is him talking about, like, the process and how things, like, come out without him seeming to have written it. Mm. And that's something that's, like, just creativity. Like, if you are... Oh, you know what? I'm Natasha, by the way.
Oh, hi, I'm Miles. How are you? How are all of you who have showed up without knowing who we are to this, the last episode of Book 6 in a 7-book series? But
yeah, if you are somebody who creates things, and, like, the podcast doesn't really count in this way for me because it's commentary on somebody else's creation. But when I'm when I'm creating my own thing, or when I used to do, like, musical theater and was on stage, there would be a lot of times, I remember this really distinctly in culinary school, actually, where people would compliment me on my work, and I wouldn't feel like I had the right to take the compliment. Like, as if I have nothing to do with the fact that I can do this well. Like, it's just a complete accident that I can sing, or it's a complete accident that I made this cake that looks like a Buddha statue, and it just came out looking exactly right. It's just an accident. Like, and I think it sounds like I'm trying to be humble, and that's not it at all. It really can feel like I had nothing to do with this. It just happened, and I happened to be the one who did it. And thanks for the compliment, but I don't get any credit because I had nothing to do with it, frankly. And I have had that happen on a bunch of projects. And it's a really strange feeling. Like, that cake, my teacher brought it in front of the class and talked about how I had transcended food. And, like, did this whole speech about it. But there was a teacher who taught ice sculpture who came in and asked me to be part of his class in this whole thing. And I felt really weird about it, because there are times where I did put the effort in, and I feel that this is the result of my hard work. But that's rarely the stuff that people feel like compelled to compliment me on. It's usually stuff that I just feel like it was an accident. Like, I just got lucky in the cards I was dealt. And it's when he's talking about, feeling like the story just comes out and people are telling him how much they love it, and he doesn't really, like, feel comfortable. That just rang super true to me. And it's really hard to get that feeling across to people who haven't experienced that without it seeming like you're being really pretentious. Like, oh, I didn't create it. I gave birth to something already formed, like, and that's not what I'm trying to say, but it's hard to, like, find the proper words for it.
I can honestly, like, I believe you when you say that. I don't think you're being pretentious, but I've definitely never felt that way. And, like, I'm sure that people who know me at all are in no way surprised by this. But, yeah, I do something, I'm like, yo, look at what I did. I did that. I did it. It was hard. Or maybe it was easy. Sometimes it was better if it was easy. Right. Yeah, I did that in like an hour. You know? Yeah, it's all me. I'm awesome. Yeah, I that's generally my attitude toward creative projects. I can't think of a moment in which I was like, no, that came on its own. It was like, no, I dragged that out.
That's like, that does happen. There are definitely times where I'm totally willing to take the credit, and I'm like, no, yeah, I worked really hard on this fucking thing.
Oh, yeah, I know.
Practice for a long time. Like, so I don't want to act like every time I create anything, it's as if God were working through me. Because it's not the majority of what, but it tends to be the things that move people the most. Yeah,
I'm just saying, like, that's me all the time. With everything.
So that was like the one thing in the coda section that I found really compelling. And of course, obviously, the fact that he died. Which I just still don't think is a thing that's real. But we'll see. We'll find out, I guess. Maybe it's supposed to be that he did die and they have to like continue on without him. Maybe that's like the challenge, you know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we know, I'm pretty sure he didn't die in real life.
What's that now?
I'm pretty sure he didn't die in real life. Like, I'm pretty sure he's alive right now in the real world.
You don't know. He might be alive and still have died. That's happened.
I mean...
Have you asked him?
Yes. He said he was alive.
But did he die?
Look, that's a sensitive subject, Natasha, and I'm not just going to ask the guy. I get the chance to meet Stephen King. I'm going to be like, hey, did you die once?
Oh my god.
But yeah, for sure. I'm just wondering if, like, because it seems like a lot of the coda is kind of pulled from real events. Like, I think probably the article that he pastes in there about the walk-ins, like, that was probably real. Because, like, a lot of the coda is about where he got certain things. It's almost like, in some ways, the coda feels to me like a reward for making it through 6. You know?
Okay.
It's like, all right, we got one more, guys. It's gonna be a big one, then we're gonna finish the story. If you've gotten this far, here's some influences. Here's some things that went into this, and you can, like, talk about that. Here's when I first started thinking about the beam. Hey, it was when I was writing It. Who knew? You know?
Right.
And, so it's kind of like, probably, like, tidbits, feedback, just not feedback, but, like, you know, Easter eggs. And, God, I was going somewhere with that.
I don't believe you.
I totally was. Damn it. Oh. Oh, no, okay, so where I was going with that was, so I'm pretty sure most of it's true, right? Like, it feels true.
Yeah.
There's no reason for it not to be true. And so, you know, I'm wondering if the headline at the end is, like, maybe somebody got it wrong. Or maybe a paper went to press, like, prematurely. And was like, Stephen King died.
I was honestly kind of waiting for that here. I thought that it was going to be, like, he was going to put the article in there, and then afterwards he was going to write, lol, isn't that weird? They thought I died, but I totally didn't die. Something like that, you know, but it turns out that it seems to be anyway, the last entry into that journal.
Right.
Which I was kind of amused at how much time passes between entries. They're like years apart.
Yeah, like a year.
And I'm pretty sure that's meant to be like, we're only pulling the relevant entries out of the journal, but it just makes it feel more real in a way, because we all go through those spurts where we're like, I need to write this down, and then we stop and then pick it back up again.
Oh, yeah, I mean, I think probably the most relevant part to the narrative in the coda is the fact that he can't leave it alone.
Right.
And, like, every time he thinks he's finished writing it, like, he hears Roland's voice in the back of his mind telling him that time is short, you have to finish it. And he also kind of sees, you know, his addictions as, like, you can read them into being the Crimson King trying to kill him or whatever.
Right.
Which is pretty rich. I mean, I wish I could explain my addictions away that way. That'd be nice. Like, no, it's not me. Somebody's using them against me. Someone has inflicted this on me.
Well, it's interesting. Go ahead. Sorry, I'm going to come back to that.
No. That was it. That was it.
I found that really compelling because of the way that a lot of people talk about their addiction. They describe it as being something that is almost outside of themselves, like a demon or a second personality that they have to learn to shut down and stop hearing or listening to or whatever. And my mom, she was an alcoholic, she said that there was a day where she was praying because she was trying to do a 12-step program. And 12 steps is really like God-centric.
Yeah.
Which is something that she really isn't a big fan of. So she's always struggled with it. And it's one of the main resources that's, handed to alcoholics. So it's frustrating because there's not a lot out there that isn't 12-step related. And if you don't feel like that resonates with you, you can feel kind of adrift. And so she was trying to get into it and do some prayers and was meditating alone in her room. And she was praying that the desire to drink would be taken away from her. And she said that she heard, straight up heard, as if somebody was standing next to her, whispered in her ear, "Just one more drink." Really heard it like it was not in her head. And whether or not it was anything or her, it doesn't feel to her like it's her. And I wonder if that's what King was trying to get across there, is that when you're in that kind of grip of something that is bad for you, straight up killing you, and yet you feel compelled anyway, even though you are fully aware that it's killing you, it can feel like you are straight up, honestly, not the one in the driver's seat anymore. And maybe that was part of how, he not, trying to abdicate responsibility for it, but just trying to get across the feeling of it to the readers of how much it just doesn't seem like you can have a big fight with your wife and know she's right and be aware that you're pouring her life down the drain and that you have children who look up to you and you might not be there and that you're making bad decisions over and over again. And that, as he says at one point, not feeling fucked up feels more fucked up than being fucked up, because he gets sober one night out of God knows how long it's been since he was sober at night to write. And it's so alien to be sober. That was one of the few things where I was like, you know what? That sounds like something I could understand. I feel thankful that I've never been in the grip of something like that. But addiction is a scary, scary thing. And
yeah, absolutely.
I just can't, I really think about that, how he says he wonders if he can keep writing once he's stopped. The kind of credit that we give mind-altering substances. People will talk about how a lot of other writers who were alcoholics, what if they didn't drink? Then maybe we wouldn't have gotten XYZ. Or, even mental illness. And addiction is considered a kind of mental illness, so it would make sense.
I mean, I guess depending which DSM you're using, yeah.
Well, I'm talking in circles here, but I found that kind of interesting.
I agree with you. I think that the not abdicating responsibility piece is important. Mm-hmm. And I think that when discussing these issues, I think it's definitely valid to talk about that feeling of powerlessness and that feeling that there is an outside force acting on you. Because, the human brain's a fucking weird thing.
Yeah, it is.
And, like, that shit will make you do things that you don't want to do for reasons you don't understand, and, like, tell someone that you would never normally tell or something.
Yep.
It will make you do weird things because your chemistry's off or whatever. But, like, in many arenas, not all of them, but in many of them, I think that it is still really important to kind of come back to that empowering, like, no, this is actually something you can control mindset. Mm-hmm. And I think that, you know, I appreciate that this story seems to be King's, at least as he looks back on it, he's almost thinking of it as, like, and writing about it as though it's his way of working through what happened with him.
Right.
And, like, what he was dealing with and how he handled it and how he fucked up and who he hurt and how he eventually came back and beat it and everything. Mm-hmm. But I think that at the same time, you really need to view it through that sort of meta lens to get that message, because narratively it seems like he's saying, I would never have been an addict, but I happen to be the most important person in the universe. And, okay. Like, you know, and again, it's just, I don't think it's either or in this case. I think the right way to kind of think about addiction, or at least the way that makes most sense to me, is to think about it in terms of, well, yes, your brain is doing weird things, and some things it's doing, you know, are out of your control. But certain decisions are, in fact, in your control. And, you know, doing them, you know, not indulging in your addiction might make you feel like, you know, someone's, like, jamming spikes into your brain. You know, but it's like, that's a choice, right? What would you rather have? It's like, are you willing to deal with the spikes in your brain? Is it that important to you to eventually not have that happen when you don't consume the substance or do whatever it is that you're doing? Or, you know, or is it more important to you to not feel that way? And I think, I'm not saying either is more valid than the other, to be honest, considering that I would hardly claim to have conquered all my addictions. And, you know, it's like, yeah, no, sometimes that feeling that you get when you give in is absolutely worth it. And I would never condemn anyone for doing that. But I think it's important to recognize that it is not completely out of your control. You know, you have a hand on the wheel, if only one.
Right, well, I'm not, like, I feel like you're arguing the actual, like, what addiction actually is, and I'm just arguing what Stephen King was doing in that.
I'm not arguing anything. I'm just talking about it. I don't really have a position here. Okay. I'm just kind of like talking about how I think about addiction and what I think he might have meant when he's writing this, you know.
Well, that's what I'm saying, is because you said, I would never have been an addict except that I'm the most important person in the universe. And I don't think that's what he was saying.
I don't think so either. I just think it's interesting that you could view it that way, and I think it's interesting that the fact that the author himself is writing about himself in this kind of meta way is a requirement to fully get what he's trying to say. You have to hold that in your mind, right? Okay. It's just a really interesting way of writing, is basically my point. Okay. Especially writing about addiction, I would say.
I'm sorry that there is a dog, like, barking directly outside my fucking window right now.
Yeah,
so
I can hear
that is distracting you, my apologies. It is also distracting me.
Anyway, maybe we should actually talk about what happens in this chapter.
Yeah, I love that we both were like, I don't know about this coda, and then that's what we talked about for fucking half an hour. Yeah. So, yeah, this was something. guys, I'm not a fan of creatures with poorly fitting flesh masks. Not here for it, not interested, don't like it. It's gross, it's horrible, and it's just so different than what I was expecting. And it really says something that, like, when the mutants who are roasting a baby are revealed behind a tapestry, I was, by then, just kind of like, yeah, well.
Of course, like, you just assumed at that point. Of course they are.
Right? Like,
what else would they be eating?
The second that that Susannah's like, that's not pork, I was like,
yeah.
Oh, for fuck's sake, okay. I guess this is what we're doing.
So, yeah, they, there's a moment at the beginning here where they kind of wonder what things would have been like. The author sort of wonders. Mm-hmm. How things might have been differently had there not been this bus in some kind of trouble on the road, right, forcing Mia and Susannah's cab driver to pull off a block early, and that allowed them to hear this guy playing the guitar. And again, as we talked about last time, the song is Man of Constant Sorrow, and what we also talked about last time and wondered is why that should bring on such a flood of emotions in Mia. And in this chapter, in the beginning of this chapter, we definitely find out.
Yeah. I really liked this whole idea of, because it's so true that music, and the other one for me is smells.
I think that's common, yeah.
I can't, it's insane sometimes how strong that is. Like, the other day, my grandmother's house was in terrible disrepair, but she would always be baking things. So the other day, I had something in the oven, and I opened the cabinet under the sink, and the smell of mildew from under the sink came out, and that mixed with the cinnamon from the oven, and I was just like, oh, Grandma. Like, just, one of those moments where you see the place that you were, you see it as if you're standing, it's like a flash, like you're standing there, and then you're back and you're like, wow, holy shit, okay. And yeah, she has never, like, experienced what it means to be a human, knowing that your life can end, will end, and might end very, very soon.
Yeah, and might end very, very soon as a direct result of an action you're taking. Mm-hmm. Like,
and you're taking it willingly, knowing that risk, because you are doing what you believe to be right.
Yeah, and for a purely symbolic cause, no less. Mm-hmm. Like, a very important symbolic cause, but, like, it talks about in the text how they all knew the kids were dead. Mm-hmm. Like, they knew it. They knew they were never going to see their friends again who had disappeared, but they went anyway because it was,
yeah,
it was important. It was the right thing to do, and it was incredibly brave, and I think that's what really gets through to Mia. Yeah. That and the mother imagery, of course.
Yeah, this finding out that Susannah, I guess Odetta, was involved with this group of people was really moving.
Yeah.
Because the three men that were killed were the three men that their murder forms the plot of the movie Mississippi Burning. Mm-hmm. And this was one of those cases where nobody would really have cared, except two of the guys were white. So that all of a sudden made the FBI, like, really get involved. And it led to the Voting Rights Act. And the Voting Rights Act was not renewed in 2013 for the first time in, like, decades. And
yeah, that happened.
Yeah. It just really got to me like being reminded of what people sacrificed in order to get the country to a place where that was something that we were like aware of and focused on and trying to fight for, and we got that passed, and now we have reached a point in our history where we are taking backward steps. And
well, it's because we've reached the end of racism, Natasha. We don't need the Voting Rights Act anymore.
That's exactly what they said, was that it's no longer relevant. And it's just, like, if you look at any studies, any of them, it's very fucking relevant, guys.
Yeah.
But sure, let's just make a big sweeping statement because a certain number of decades have passed, so now it must be better.
This was all pre-Trump craziness, by the way. This was in a slightly more sane universe. Yeah,
I mean, Obama made a speech like imploring them to at least come up with a new version, because that was the main thing, was that the argument was that portions of the Voting Rights Act had been written when things were way, way worse, and that they just weren't relevant because they were too restrictive or looking at things that were no longer such an issue anymore. And in like, to a point, I understand what they were saying, but they didn't decide to amend it. They decided to simply not renew it. And if you are at all educated in gerrymandering and voter ID laws and anything like that, you know that the disenfranchisement of black voters is still very much alive and is, if anything, gaining new ground. And yeah, so like, I'm feeling real sensitive to this whole thing, and this being brought up and framed in such a familiar way with somebody that we've gotten to know so well, who is aware that these guys were doing what she's about to go do, and they are dead, and they are gone. And they were killed by fucking law enforcement. They were killed by cops. Like, arrested, detained, the cops realized, well, we can't kill them here. They were let go, and then they were overtaken right outside the border of the state, I think it was, and taken to a second location and executed, and their car was burned, and they were buried, and nobody found their bodies for like 2 months. And they only found the bodies because I think somebody started to have second thoughts about it and gave the police like an inside tip. But this, like, it's just a little too fucking close to right now and things that are happening, and the reveal, like turning over a rock of the disgusting underbelly of things that we previously were able to pretend were not happening because cameras were not everywhere. And people were afraid to say anything. And now people are starting to speak up. And it's, becoming more and more apparent that this is... No, sorry. Yeah. That this is something that is just hidden better. It's by no means gone. It's not even happening less often. It's just hidden better. Listen. Just gets... It's upsetting, man.
Yeah. No, it's definitely upsetting. What do you make of the revelation that Susannah has toward the end of this chapter, that she thinks Odetta might have been the one who let Mia in somehow?
I don't know. I'm not even sure what he was trying to say there.
Yeah, neither am I.
I read that a couple times, and I was like, I'm not getting this, because she says something like he drank the poison.
It's interesting because it's been so long since we really spent any time with Odetta. Mm-hmm. Detta's been around. Like, she's shown up every once in a while. Occasionally, Susannah talks in her voice. Mm-hmm. But Susannah, personality-wise, is at least... Well, no, I'm not going to say she's closer to one or the other, but Detta's definitely been more present. And Odetta seemed to have kind of gone away. Mm-hmm. And, I appreciate, first of all, I want to say that I appreciate that King kind of realized that and reconnected her to the story somewhat. Because I feel like if you're going to do it with Detta, you should do it with Odetta as well. Mm-hmm. I am supremely annoyed by the fact that he chose to insert a detail about her as, you know, that would have been as commonly used a thing as a nickname this late in the game. It annoys the shit out of me. He says they called her in those days, they called her Det.
What?
Which we knew her in those days. That was where we first met her, and nobody called her Det. It's just aggravating.
Oh, okay. That didn't... Okay.
That's a totally minor complaint. But the fact that she was the one to kind of let somebody in, I don't know. I think maybe it speaks to the kind of character that's being described in these flashbacks, that kind of bravery, that kind of compassion. I think maybe it speaks to the fact that Odetta was the original person.
Okay.
Like, before that girl got a brick dropped on her head, she was Odetta Holmes.
Right.
And so I can see Odetta Holmes as a personality being the sort of person... Susannah describes it, like, when she's thinking all this to herself, she's like... She thinks of it as, like, Eddie's drug use. Like, maybe she's addicted in some way to being possessed by other personalities. And if there's a person who's addicted to that, it would be Odetta. Because Odetta's the one who's been possessed by all of them. She's the one who kind of... She was first possessed by Detta, and then later by Susannah, who then was in turn possessed by Mia. So, I don't know. I find it interesting that Odetta seems to be like this really... you know, kind of compassionate, not like obviously vicious or you know, mean-spirited person, but definitely a brave person, definitely someone who has, you know, who has some iron, as they might say, you know, so it's like, so yeah, I can see a person like that on some level that wouldn't even have made it up to the conscious mind, recognizing what was happening with Mia and being like, yeah, you know what, come on in, because I'm strong enough to handle this. So why don't you just show up, do your thing, and we'll take care of it. Do you know what I mean?
I don't, though. Because how would she even have invited Mia in? How is Mia knocking on the door?
Well, this is all, I'm speaking of this in terms of, like, you know...
I know, I get the way you're framing it, but I just don't understand what King is implying in terms of how that would work. I don't know. I stopped and reread that little section a couple times, and I just was like, I'm not understanding what he's doing here. I don't know.
I think it's about Odetta. I think it's about who Odetta was.
Okay.
It's kind of, I don't know. And I say that, you know, within the context of a lot of this chapter is about Odetta, and that's interesting and notable because not very much of these books has been about her.
Okay.
It's been way more about Susannah and Detta than it has been about Odetta.
That's true. And I did find Odetta really interesting because of that the first time we meet her, she's talking very calmly to, is it a taxi driver or is it like her personal driver? It's her personal
driver, Andrew, right? Yeah.
And you really get the sense that she's somebody who is extremely controlled, and yet there is so much rage there. So I could see that being like you get addicted to something that makes you feel like you can actually express yourself when you haven't been kind of allowed to.
Man, that's another thing, too. Yeah, no, I totally agree. But, like, think about it. I'm just going back to, like, how this is all making Mia feel. Mm-hmm. Like, how all these observations about who Odetta was and this experience that she had is making Mia feel. And it's like, we talked about how she's understanding what it is to be mortal and what it is to risk your life when you don't necessarily need to. And,
right.
like, that applies 100 times more to this particular person. Because first of all, Odetta's rich.
True.
So she doesn't need to be out there in any sense. But the other piece of it, and the piece that's not, like... I mean, it is explicitly said, but it's not explicitly, this sentence isn't said, but, like, the fact that she's black is it sort of implies that she does have to be out there because this force of, like, racism is impinging on her ability to live her mortal life in a way that would be satisfactory, right? And, like, she can't just go and live because shit's not right. Even though she only has the one life, even though she only has the money, and even though going and doing the thing she's doing is going to put her in danger of losing that life, it's almost a compulsion in and of itself because she's pulled so strongly by that sense of justice and injustice. Does that am I making sense at all?
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
Feels like this is a weird episode.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of mental stuff happening in this stanza that is really, it feels very experimental on King's part. Almost like he wasn't quite sure what he was doing here, because, like...
Almost like it just came out of him without asking.
Oh, shut up. So, I mean, she has this, like, moment where she's really moved, and this seems to bring her closer to Susannah, but it also, for Susannah, is, like, too late, because you didn't fucking listen to me in the first place.
All of this is, like, Mia realizing far too late that she shouldn't have been doing any of this, and that she's been on the wrong side this whole time.
This is, like, I'm pretty much 100% sure that this is not what King is doing. But hear me out, because this is maybe an unintentional, like, metaphor that I'm kind of digging here.
I'm ready.
So, there is... well-meaning liberals love to do there's just one race, the human race, kind of thing, you know? And that, like, what they want is to divide us. We can't let ourselves be divided, man. But there is a tiny granule of truth to that if you look at our history as a country. Like, there was a concerted effort to, once it looked like poor white people and black people were going to stand together, there was a documented effort to convince poor whites that they were better than poor black people.
Oh, it wasn't just poor white people and black people, it was also poor white people and natives.
And like, basically pit as many people against one another as possible. And using race. So, what if the fucking Dixie Pig, because it's called the Dixie Pig, is rich white people who have fooled the white lady into telling her, no, we're totally going to help you out. We're totally on your side. We just don't like that other one. She's unmanageable. We can't, and you know, you're just better than she is. You will talk to us and you will do your job, and you know how to work hard.
I love this so much.
And she's like, see, I talk to them and I work hard and they understand that and they appreciate it. And Susannah's over here like, dude, they're totally fucking lying to you. And she's like, no, they're not. I'm going to get mine. I really am.
Oh my god. That makes so much sense. And she just
fucking saunters up into that shit and realizes a second too late, oh, I've made a terrible mistake. And Susannah can't even, like, be satisfied because she's just fucked them both over.
That is fucking brilliant.
I don't know if that's on purpose, but, like, it's called the Dixie Pig, though, so, like, I'm gonna stick to this.
Right. You're basically saying that, like, the way Mia is feeling, like, the moment after she enters the Dixie Pig is, like, how a certain kind of Trump voter felt the day after the election.
If they were smart enough to feel that way.
Yeah, if they were smart enough to feel that way. It's like, oh, Oh no! Oh no! You're not gonna do those things you said you were gonna do, are you?
Yep.
I should not have done this, should I?
I feel like it's more like the moment, like, because I think we've all been through this. If you're somebody who's like, even if you're not, quote, working class, if you're not somebody, if you have like a white collar job, I bet this has happened too. But you go into a job interview and they promise you the fucking world. Oh no, like, you know, if you complete this training thing, we're going to be able to give you a pay bump in like 3 months. And there's a position opening actually that we think you'd be perfect for. So this would actually be us training you to fill that position. So, you know, and they tell you all of the ways that you're going to be able to like take time off and how great their insurance plan is. And then you leave your other job and go there and it turns out like, oh, well, you know, insurance is only covered for you. Your family, it's going to cost extra. And, oh, that pay bump, yeah, we're not going to be able to do that. I know that you completed the training and
I don't know.
That's super great, but we're not going to be able to do that for a couple months. So just hold tight. And like a year later, it still hasn't happened.
I mean, the way you described it, it feels almost like the American dream concept writ large.
Exactly.
It's like, no, if you white people, if you do the right things, you will be able to get to where we're at. And all you have to do is get there before these other people get there. Mm-hmm. And don't let them have an inch. And fucking don't vote for people who will give them rights because they're not your friends. We're your friends. And they just want you to not get to where we're at.
They just want to get to where you are, but not have to work for it.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, God, and they're fucking sharing the labor. Oh, my God. They're sharing the labor.
This is what I'm saying.
Natasha.
That was the part that I...
They're laboring together.
Yep. but she's literally getting, like, the fruit of her labor siphoned away from her.
Literally, the fruit of her labor. Woman. That's what's happening.
Yep.
Oh, God, I love this book so much more now, and I'm never going to be able to see this in any other way. That's it. It's done.
I wish I could talk to King and ask him if this was on purpose.
Oh, God, you should. Fucking tweet him.
Maybe I will. All right, why not?
I just want to say real quick.
Okay.
We don't have to have... So, like, I totally agree with you that fucking... We're all the human race, man, is, like, the bullshit mating call of, like... privileged white liberals everywhere, but I do think there's more than just a grain to the like they want to divide us thing. I think that's real, and like I don't think that invalidates people who are like, hey, this is like, you know, I am defined by my race or my gender or whatever, and I am not. And I think it's important that we recognize the differences and that we not just try to get everybody, like, push all these atrocities under the rug, under the edifice of equality and, like, species solidarity, I guess. Like, I get that, but that's definitely still what they want you to be doing.
See, and that's, like, that's the thing, is when I say a grain of truth, I mean, way back, that was... how they organized everything, like, straight up front. And then it just took on a life of its own because people are terrible and easy to manipulate. And now, are they still doing that? Sure. But is there also an insane amount of privilege going on that white liberals just straight up still don't want to face and acknowledge?
And of course.
And that's the main thing to me, is that you can't talk about the human race if you're unwilling to acknowledge the current inequalities and oppression that people are facing. And that's the thing, is that frequently that's used as a kind of a silencing technique. It's used as a derailment. And
of course, but like the reason Breitbart exists is to do that. Mm-hmm. Like that's why fucking Milo Yiannopoulos has a job. I mean, I guess he doesn't have one with Breitbart anymore, but still, like why he is able to. What
that man is even doing? What is he
why doing? He's able to do what he does? Like why there's an audience for it? Why there's benefactors for it? Why he's able to make a living doing it? Is because there are powerful people in this country and in this world who have a very vested interest in making sure that the lower economic classes don't rise up as one. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, no, and I completely agree that it's way too often it's used as a silencing technique, and it's way too often used as saying, like, shut up, your identity politics don't matter, but...
I really can't say that I have ever heard that said in a way that meant, let's all look at where we stand as a nation and what we've done and who we are. I've never seen it said in a way that meant what they seem to be saying. It always has been used as a way to be like, stop talking about this thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's because our communication is broken, because the internet sucks.
If it was the internet's fault, then it's just people.
I mean, it's people communicating through certain media. But yeah, I know, I agree with you. I think that I have heard it said the other way, but certainly not anywhere close to as often.
Yeah, it's like if we said we're all one race, the human race, and look at the way that this portion of our race has been totally mistreated, and let's focus on that and address that, that would be one thing. But it's just...
I'd settle for Occupy. I'd settle for the message of Occupy, which was... there's a tiny amount of them, and there's a shit ton of us, and we should be doing something about the power that the tiny amount of them are exerting over the shit ton of us.
Well, and that's part of the elitism, I feel like, of practicing nonviolence. I just really think that trying to act like, well, we can just protest nonviolently and overcome. No, you can't. Nothing has ever been accomplished in terms of like a revolution without there being violence involved. It's just not, it doesn't happen. People don't work that way.
I feel like we could do a whole other podcast about this. I'm not sure I agree with you, but I definitely think there are times when violence is justified for these reasons. And I definitely think that often it is a necessary tool in what I guess we would be calling revolutions. I'm not sure it's never worked nonviolently, because I'm pretty positive there are instances that I could bring up if I did my research. But your point stands on a broad, general scale. Yeah.
Yeah, it feels like they're trying to appeal to, well, let's ask our oppressors nicely and appeal to their better nature and show them all the facts, and then they'll understand. And that's not why they oppress you. They oppress you because they can get things from you.
That's why I can't handle Democrats.
That's part, it all gets wrapped up together basically in this. I just can't think of it as in other terms other than saying that it's elitist.
Yeah.
But I feel really strongly that we have reached a point where we've gotten about as far as we're going to get unless we start taking actual action, and that's going to look violent. And
I agree.
That's just maybe what we need. But it's hard to... It's hard when you've been brought up in, I feel like as millennials especially, we got fed nonviolent protest as the beacon of democracy, as an example of how to be the ideal,
Well, and I think, and I agree with what you're saying for the most part, but I think that there's something to the notion that, to use violence is to use the tools of oppressors.
Mm-hmm.
And basically what you're doing when you do that is you're saying, I'm going to play your game and I'm going to turn it against you and I'm going to destroy you using your own weapons, mm-hmm. which sometimes works, but I also, I don't, there are consequences to doing that. And I think there are, I see both sides of things. I think that nonviolent protest rarely will work. Nonviolent protest is probably not going to get any sort of drastic change done on the level that we need right now. But that doesn't mean that it's not the better way to do it. Right? Like, if it were effective, it would clearly be the better way to do it. But at a certain point, you need something to happen more than you need to fucking save your own soul. So...
I mean... The better way to do it is just such a subjective thing that I can't agree. You know, like, better according to whom? Better according to what standard? Better according to people who are on the sidelines, who aren't directly affected by these issues, maybe? But is it better for the people who are constantly dealing with this every day and still are not believed by the majority of the country that this is their experience?
I think it's better for the person who would be pulling the trigger to not pull the trigger.
I mean, again, though, better. What does that mean? What is that, like, it's just kind of a meaningless word after a moment.
Healthier?
You know? Is it? Why? If pulling that trigger ensures that, you know, dozens of other people are not going to be threatened and oppressed and killed,
I'm if you kill somebody and in doing so you protect a bunch of other people, then it's certainly better for those. It's certainly healthier for those other people that you did that, right? Is it healthier for you personally as an individual? I don't know. I suspect that there are some serious mental consequences that come with doing that, based on what I've read and heard about, you know, studies on people who have killed in the military, for example. You know, I mean, fucking, if you want to go, like, meta nerd culture with it, like, in Harry Potter, you split your soul, right? Like,
I mean,
you know, I'm just saying.
Using a spell, that doesn't just happen. But
still, that's a metaphor for the act of murder. And, you know, again, what defines murder? What defines killing? Like, there's a bunch of nuances to this. I feel like there is, you know, it does depend on how you define it. I feel like there is some sort of moral level to all of it, where it's like, you know, what the highest form of morality is to kill not for yourself, but for the sake of others, right? Isn't that you know, so it's like, that's the highest form of morality in certain philosophies because it encompasses the most personal sacrifice. You're sacrificing something through the act of killing for the sake of someone else, not for your own sake. That's often considered the most moral thing a person can do. So right. I think that speaks to what the act of killing somebody does to a person in their own head. Whether or not it's better for other people, whether or not it's better for society as a whole, I mean, that just completely depends. And I think that it's that you know, as long as the ends, the goals are noble or just in some way, then yes, it is better for society as a whole. Absolutely. Yeah, but that's still, if you could accomplish the same thing, if you could have a person accomplish the exact same thing without having to kill somebody, you would choose that, right?
Yeah, but that's a pointless question. That's not even worth talking about. Like, that's like being like, well, I mean, if you could lose weight without not eating the foods that you love and exercising more, wouldn't you do that? Well, fucking duh, of course.
Oh, that's not. I don't think it's a worthless question though, because like that's what people who advocate nonviolence, like really seriously, that's their argument. That you can arrive at the same goal through nonviolent means. Now, you might not believe that. I don't think I believe it, but that's what they say. And I don't think they're saying that.
You're not saying, do you believe that can be accomplished? You're saying, wouldn't it be better if you could accomplish exactly what you wanted without violence than with it? And that's a completely impossible hypothetical question that can't have any real answer.
I mean, that's fine. That's the same thing I said 10 minutes ago. I mean,
Is it?
Yeah.
Not really. Like, you're asking something that isn't real. You're asking, like, well, if we could just... basically what I said, if we could just, ask nicely and appeal to the better nature of people and they would recognize what they're... But that's not...
No, I know.
So what's the point of even asking?
I don't know. My point was, in an ideal world, you could accomplish massive change through nonviolent action in the same exact way and prevent the same amount of suffering, but we don't live in that world, so you probably can't. That was my whole point, like a long time ago.
Okay. I mean, it feels like you were pushing to get me to, like, admit, well, wouldn't that be better? And, like I said, it just feels, well, of course it would be better, but that's not, I'm not
pushing to admit anything. You just, you seem to be asking me what I meant by what I was saying, so I was just trying to explain it.
Okay.
I have no rooting interest in how you see the world, Natasha.
Well, I feel like with this and the thing with his addiction, you keep being like, oh, I'm not arguing either way in the end, but it feels like you are arguing one way or another in the moment and asking me to admit your point. And... No,
I'm not. I'm merely explaining how I see it. I'm not asking you to admit my point.
Okay. So how you see it is that it would be better in an ideal world if we didn't have to use violence.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I mean, I feel like you used a lot of words that didn't you didn't need to if you just, because yeah, of course, in an ideal world, that would be lovely. Yeah, that's fine, but that's not where we live.
Listen, using a lot of words that I didn't need to express a thought is basically what I do.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, tune in later for the plugs if you want more proof of that.
But yeah, what we need is revolution. Okay,
absolutely. We're on the same page. We're on the same page. Revolution. Kill the masters.
So yeah, that's what I feel like is going on in the Dixie Pig.
Fuck! Did I just reference Game of Thrones season 5? Fuck.
Kill the Masters? Oh, yeah,
I think I just referenced Game of Thrones Season 5.
It's really funny that you mentioned that, because I'm literally uploading those right now to the website. That's funny.
Anyway.
But, anyway, so, this...
Where were we?
This has just gone so wildly off the rails at this point. So fucking... What is Sayers? Is he like a wolf? Like he's just covered in red hair.
I mean, she says that like when she starts being able to see through the flesh masks, like they're all kind of covered in red hair, aren't they? Or is it just him?
Some of them are. Some of them are birds. One woman that fat woman is a rat.
There's a couple of rats, because I think, like, the midwife is a rat, too, right?
Yeah, there's the midwife who's a rat, there's the woman in the lame dress who's a rat, the guy with her is a rat in the bow tie, and then there's a bunch of bugs, too. Don't care for that at all.
The bugs felt super cartoonish to me. Maybe it was just me. I don't know.
That's part of what I think I found creepy, is that it does feel really cartoony, but... so much the whole thing feels like a fever dream. People with animal heads and people with like fucked up faces eating babies at dining tables. Like the whole thing is so outlandish, but he leans into it so hard. I feel like this wouldn't work for me if it weren't for how much he commits to it.
Yeah, it's really like... It's one of those things where you wonder how bad it can actually be. Like, how crazy are we going to get here?
Right.
And it's like, oh shit, that guy has a bird head. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, I think it's like, before we walk in, I'm thinking back to like, well, what was I expecting when we went in? And I was just expecting a lot of really creepy people, probably murder. I think if I had really thought about it, I would have expected cannibalism, but not of a baby. I think I would have expected of just like people, because they're vampires. So,
it had to be a baby, didn't it?
It had to be a baby, of course.
Yeah.
If only to just make Mia go, they're not going to eat my baby, are they? And
Susanna's which kills me, because it's like, no!
Right? Susannah says, I'm pretty sure not, but also she thinks that there is some kind of cannibalism that will be involved in whatever they're planning.
Right. But clearly they're not going to eat your baby, Mia, because your baby is the Antichrist. Right. So they don't want to eat the Antichrist. They want him to go do Antichrist things.
They're going to give him to the wrong nanny, and he's going to be brought up to be a lovely young man. If any of you guys have not read Good Omens, you should look into it.
Oh God, when is that show coming out? I can't wait for that.
Nick Offerman's going to be in it. I'm like, who's he going to be? I hope he's the dad of, like, the good devil.
The dad?
The dad, yeah, the one who adopted him. But yeah, I think I totally get what you mean. And there were points where it did feel really cartoony, but there was something about the way that he describes everything that makes, in my head, when I'm picturing how this would be filmed, I'm getting a real Requiem for a Dream vibe. With, like, camera swooping way too close in on people's faces, spinning around a little bit, like she's overwhelmed by all of the people around her, laughing and how horrifying they are. Have you seen Requiem for a Dream?
Yes. Once, never
remember
again.
the scene? I know. I can't. I have a friend who used to fucking shoot up while watching that movie.
Oh, God.
How, though? What?
How would you... It's like... That's like... watching the... Have you seen Monty Python and the Meaning of Life?
Part of it.
Okay, have you seen the vomiting scene?
No.
Okay, well that's like watching the vomiting scene while you're eating. Like, how could you even do that?
But yeah, it makes me think, like, what I kept thinking of here was the scene where the refrigerator comes alive. That was what, like, that garish, horrifying, because it's so over the top.
Yeah.
Like, if you filmed it in a different way, if you had different actors who weren't quite as good, this would be hilarious and awful. But because you have people who are nailing how eerie this is and how upsetting it is, and because you're filming it in this really disorienting way, it is utterly horrifying. Like, that scene fucked me up. That movie, I had to sleep in my mom's bed after. I was 16 years old. And I had to go and climb into my mom's bed in the middle of the night because I had nightmares and I could not handle it. So that's what I picture here.
It's funny because I think one of the reasons I found the bugs so kind of like jarring in their cartooniness was that King usually does a good job with me and with bugs. Like, I talk a lot of shit about Insomnia because it's a fucking boring as shit, terrible book. But there's a dream sequence in Insomnia. It must have been in the early part because, you know, that's the part I read. But there's a dream sequence where, like, the dude sees his wife who's either already dead or, like, dying of cancer. I forget which one. And, like, he's on an island on a beach and she's, like, buried up to her neck, and so just her head is sticking out and she's talking to him. And, like, as she's talking to him, her head, like, splits open and, like, these beetles start to come out.
God.
And I was freaked the fuck out, dude. King is good at that stuff. I think it was him who wrote, because he wrote that book Danse Macabre, right, which was about writing. I'm pretty sure it was him, and he mentioned like the 3 different levels of like horror writing, which the first one is terror, where you never actually see what's menacing. And then there's, like, horror where you see some, and then there's just, like, the gross out.
Right.
You know, what he says is, when I'm not a good enough writer to go for terror or horror, I just do the gross out.
Yeah, I'm always, like, that's one of the things that really gets me as a TV viewer, or movie viewer, too, is, like, if you don't show the monster, I find that way, way scarier. Once I see it, I know what I'm dealing with, and I'm just like, oh, whatever. But as soon as you let me see its edges and its, like, seams, and I'm like, oh, here's what you do. And that's,
right.
like, that's my control freak aspect. It's, like, part of why I hate dealing with, like, plans that rely on other people, is because I have to, like, deal with this unknown. Are they going to come through? Are they going to be able to do it? Whereas if they just said, oh, no, I can't do that, then at least I know what I'm fucking dealing with. So, yes, I am comparing making plans to monsters. What? Guys, shut up.
Good to know.
So, yeah, she starts to give birth. They split off. Susannah is her whole separate person because she agreed that if it turns out that they're not going to let her keep the baby, she'll kill them both in exchange for Mia letting her free. So she is a whole separate person that just came flopping out onto the floor.
Yeah, there's a couple little sequences here. There's one scene in this chapter where Susannah goes back to the Dogan and it's like falling apart. And she has to keep it together long enough for them to get inside the Dixie Pig. And there's this other scene where she talks to Mia on the Castle Allure again. And she realizes that this is kind of Mia's Dogan. And there's a really cool moment in here, too, where she reflects on how powerful Mia has to be to do what she's doing.
Right.
And, like, how much of a shame it is that the only thing that can motivate her to do this kind of thing is, like, her baby.
Yeah.
You know? But, yeah, and then once they get into Fedek, into the experimental station or whatever, then they are once again two people. And it's like, I feel like, and I didn't get this the first time I read it, but reading it again, I feel like what happened was, maybe you might have gotten this already and just like, I'm an idiot for not saying it the first time around, but Mia was already in this place, and once Susannah got here, they stopped, she went back to her own body because her body was like right there. Kind of.
Wait. Okay, back up. Say that again, because I think you're. I'm not sure that I did.
I'm not
get that.
communicating effectively in this episode. So there's a bit. They go into the thing. They go into the Dixie Pig, right? And she has their confrontation with Sayre, and Detta spits in his face, and he makes Mia lick his boots, which is gross, and all that stuff. Oh, I
forgot about that whole fucking thing.
And they're all saying, Heil Mia, Heil Mother. And the end of that section, section 17, the last line is, ultimately, of course, there was a door.
Right.
So, and at one point, later, Sayre says, like, we needed you here. We needed you, like, here in Fedek. Which is where we know Mia was. Because she talks about how, like, when she was in Fedek, that was actually real. That wasn't, like, a Dogan. That was, like, her seeing where Mia actually lived. So, Mia was already in Fedek physically. That's where her body was.
Right.
And when Susannah gets pushed through the door, Mia is already lying on one of the birthing beds, right?
Okay.
She's just gone out of Susannah's mind because all of a sudden she's back in her own. I think that's what happened. Because now they're in the same place. Because Susannah went through a door into Fedek.
I didn't even pick up on that at all. I'm going to have to go back and reread that.
Like I said, I didn't at all the first time around.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Yeah. I feel like I definitely missed a big thing then.
I don't know if it's that big a thing. I think it's just like, her body, her like physical, like she was astral projecting this whole time or whatever, right? Or something like that.
Right.
Like her physical body was here the whole time.
Okay. Huh. I wonder, does that change anything? Do you think?
I don't know.
I'm wondering if missing that, if I had figured that out, it would have made me see things differently.
It didn't really make me see things any differently. It was just interesting. But I will say this, that going back to your like metaphor about like white elites and white lower classes and racism and shit. The fact that the black lady is slowly turning white.
Oh my god, I forgot about that. Yes. You see? Okay.
Just realized that.
Accident, right?
It can't be by accident, dude.
I gotta tweet at him.
Yeah. Because, like, if it's by accident, it's an epic accident.
The Dixie Pig, come on.
Yeah, man. Come on. Anyway.
Yeah, listeners, like, if you guys have a feeling about this either way, if you feel like I'm full of shit, I do want to hear from you. If you don't think I'm full of shit and this has occurred to you already and you have, like, other evidence that you think backs this up, I want to hear that too. If you know that King was already interviewed about this and he has said one way or another, definitely hit me up and tell me about that.
I might have to write about this. And I'm gonna give you. I'll give you all the credit. Don't worry about it.
I'm just really curious, like, with the next book, what this means. You know what I mean? Like, does this metaphor continue on, or is it just kind of up until here and then it's done?
I have no earthly idea. That will be interesting to know when I get around to reading the next book, though.
You're so full of shit. I hate you.
Yeah, I know.
I hate your face. That's my angry, unspoiled Natasha voice. I just start to growl. Fuck you. I started to do that with Westworld with Rashawn. She was like, well, could it be this? And I'm like, yeah, it could be that. I don't fucking know. I don't trust the writers. I don't trust you. And she was like, you don't trust me? I'm like, no, of course I don't trust you. What? Why would I? And after watching the next episode,
you can't trust the spoiled ones.
Oh my god. She led me down a fucking primrose path.
Oh man, now I have to watch Westworld so I can listen to your shows about watching Westworld.
You really need to watch Westworld, dude. You would really enjoy it. And I think that it's one of the best shows I've done, podcast-wise.
Alright. I'm gonna check it out. There's also this really annoying doctor in here who's pretty great.
This doctor. This guy cracks me the fuck up because he is just trying to act like he's at work.
He really is just, like, trying to act like everything is normal. I think he's a regular human.
I can't get over this. Like, how he like, you're dealing with a bulldog person, guy. You don't get to just, like, yell at him about how slow he is. And apparently he's not that slow. Because he moved so fast at one point that Susannah's like, I think that Roland would really get a run for his money on this guy.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that part.
Yeah. But yeah, this guy cracks me up, and also, like, that he's like, he says, the way that King phrases something is about the furrows in his hair from his comb were like canyons, because his hair is thinning and he has, like, too much product in it.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know why that tickled me so much, but that description just felt really fucking dead on. Like, it just was so evocative. There are just things that... things about certain people's appearance that when a writer gets it really well, I'm just like, oh, yes, thank you. Like, you said it, finally. You put words to a thing I notice all the time. Just loved it. Is it Sayers that's wearing the suit that's like a used car salesman who's like a huckster?
Yeah, I feel like he's...
It's him, right?
So, at the beginning they talk about there's a dude in his 60s wearing a yellow suit, and then they say Sayers wearing a yellow suit and he's middle-aged. Is 60s still middle-aged? Because I feel like middle-aged is a little bit younger than that. Am I wrong?
Middle-aged I would put at... I guess 60, like, 60's the cutoff. Decades 40 to 50 and 50 to 60 are middle-aged. And then you get to 60 and you're starting to get into senior citizen status.
I kind of feel like there's a lot of dudes running around wearing this yellow suit, and, like, he's the leader of them. And they all probably have the little, like, little eye, the bleeding eye in their foreheads.
Zoot, zoot, riot, riot.
Riot! Where did that even come from?
Oh, my God. I'm just thinking about him being the leader of a bunch of guys in yellow suits and, like, dancing in the fucking street with their... yeah.
There's a line earlier on where they're doing the flashbacks, where they're talking about the three kids, you know, that got killed and how you know, the realization that they're dead and they're never going to be found or whatever. And at one point, King writes their names: James Chaney, 21, Andrew Goodman, 21, Michael Schwerner, 24, O Discordia. And then the line is, "And to you who favor darkness, give you joy of the red eye that shines there."
Yeah.
Which I really enjoyed for some reason.
It reminded me of that Modest Mouse album title, Good News for People Who Love Bad News.
Yeah. It's like, you know, and for all the rest of you who think that, like, murder is just super, you know, good for you.
Enjoy yourselves.
Yeah.
Toast.
Anyway. So yeah, they put Susannah down, they put these, like, Flash Gordon helmets on their heads, explicitly described that way, of course. And, they basically finished the process of, like, sucking the baby from Susannah into Mia, right?
Yeah.
And she's like, at this point, Susannah is fully owning this baby.
You know,
like, at one point, she's like, "This is my baby and Roland's baby, and not yours, Mia. And I will save the baby if I can, but I will not save you."
You know, I'm realizing, too, that there's, like... Because I'm comparing, you know, the baby and the fruits of her labors and it being stolen from her. But, like, there's also the super literal black women gave birth to babies that were straight up taken. Hi. And also black women being treated as mammy figures. As a stereotype. Holy shit. I really hope that's on purpose, because now I'm just starting to be like, if this isn't on purpose, you just stumbled into a hornet's nest, my friend.
I mean, given what we know of King, I wouldn't be the most surprised if it was on purpose, you know what I mean?
I wouldn't be the most surprised, but I'm just like, you know, when it starts to get to a point where you're like, all right, if this isn't, then we need to sit down and have a little talk.
Yeah. If this isn't, then I want to know how your brain works that you just came up with this.
Right?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ. This is too much. I needed them to be saved, and they weren't.
Yeah, they were not saved. There's a link established between them that helps it all happen, and then it's just pushing. And on the wings of that song, Mordred Deshane, son of Roland, and one other, oh, can you say Discordia, came into the world.
And one other? Are they saying son of Roland and son of one other, or are they saying Mordred and one other came into the world?
I think it's son of Roland and one other, because they've just explicitly referred to him as the son of the Crimson King. Or, they don't say he's the son of the Crimson King, they say the child belongs to the Crimson King.
Oh, the fucking doctor says that, and what's-his-face has to punch him. Until he's like, his blood splatters on the wall.
Well, yeah, because as soon as he says that, Mia knows for a fact they're not going to give her what she wants.
Yep. I love that moment.
Yeah. It's again, not to go back to the metaphor, but like it takes Mia to this point.
Yep.
To this point to finally be sure that she's getting screwed on this deal.
You know what? Mia's that horse on Animal Farm that like gets put into the thing, and they keep telling him that he's getting brought to like a pasture, and then it's the animals all see that it says like, "You're getting brought to someplace to be killed and made into glue." Do you remember Animal Farm?
Yeah, Natasha.
What?
Don't tell anybody this.
Have you not fucking read Animal Farm, Miles Schneiderman?
I've never read it.
What the fuck is wrong with you? Dude.
I don't know.
That book, when you read that book, you are not going to be able to stop talking about it for like a year. So you know what? Wait until we've finished with this Dark Tower podcast, and then go and read it.
No, I know. I've read so much Orwell, and I'm so ashamed because I've never read that. And Sharon's been trying to get me to read it for a while now, and I have to. And I know I have to. And, like, I know about it. I know everything about it. I know what it is. I've read scholarly articles examining it.
Oh my God.
But if I'm being perfectly honest, I have never actually sat down and read it.
I can't believe you, of all fucking people, haven't read it.
I know! It's crazy.
Well, there's this horse, Buttercup.
I'm aware. I'm aware of everything you said. I knew
I'm
none of
going
it
to
was
explain
news
it
to
to
me.
the listener.
Yeah, okay.
Guys, there's this horse Buttercup who keeps getting promised that he's going to have it real easy if he just keeps working hard. And basically, there's, a revolution where the pigs take over because they feel like they're being exploited for their labor by the farmer. And then the pigs start to do the exact same shit. And Buttercup keeps working and keeps toiling, doing thankless jobs day in and day out until his body just starts to break down. And he gets promised, like, oh, we got you a cart, and just get up on this cart, and you're finally going to be able to go and retire to the land of milk and honey. And the other animals can see on the side of the cart that it says that it's a butcher shop that's picking him up. And they are yelling at him not to get on in the first place, but he won't listen. And then once he gets on, and they read that, and they tell him, by then he's too tired to get off again.
Yep.
Like, it's too late. He's just so worn out and exhausted that there is nothing in him left to keep on fighting. He's just, everything's been taken. And that is who Mia is in this, like, little last moment here to me. She's realizing too late, and there's no way to fight anymore. She hasn't got it in her.
I absolutely see that.
She hasn't got it in her because it's
coming out.
It came out.
Oh God!
Of her cunning crevice. Whatever the fuck.
You built up all that goodwill with that brilliant metaphor that you found, and now you're just, like, pissing it away.
I didn't piss it. He pissed it. He did it. He wrote cunning crevice.
Cunning crevice.
Oh my God. Is that where the cunnilingus comes from?
Oh. Maybe.
LOL! Alright,
yes,
moving on.
Stephen King made up cunnilingus. Don't think about that for any length of time. Just forget that it was ever said by anyone. Anyway, anything else you want to bring up about the coda besides the fact that he mentions that he's, hey, I should write about an annoying rare book dealer someday. Joking.
He says psychopathic rare book dealer. And
that's right.
I guess really when you think about, like, his behavior and his obsession, one could say, like, that he was nuts, but it doesn't feel like the right description to me. It took, like, in other words, when I read that, it took me a second to realize that he meant Calvin Tower. Because I was like, Calvin's just infuriating. He's not psychopathic.
Oh, wow, that's funny.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
I do. I knew that he meant Calvin Tower right away, but I do. I mean, he had his psychopathic moments. I feel like.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I don't know. It's fun. The coda is fun. I think it's, somewhat self-indulgent, surely.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And not strictly necessary. Like I said, I think it's an Easter egg. I think it's just like, since I wrote myself into my story, here's some other fun tidbits you might like to know for all the kids at home. But aside from that, it's interesting, but not, nothing to really write home about.
I wonder, because after Bag of Bones was over, the audiobook, there was an interview with him where they asked him about his writing process for Bag of Bones and, like, some of the reasons he made the choices that he did. And I wonder if there's anything like that at the end of the Dark Tower series, like the final audiobook. Guys, if you listen to the audiobook, let me know. I don't fuck with the audiobooks. I tried a sample of one thinking that I could just do that and have this, be another book that I just listened to. But that narrator is not my cup of tea. So,
yeah,
I didn't wind up doing that.
I will say that the coda does kind of reinforce the whole notion of, like, Dark Tower incorporating all these elements of his other stories. That's also one of the interesting things about it, is that you get kind of, like, and I have read a fair number of these. Actually, everybody on the Dark Tower spoiler chat with Miles TM has been very good about telling me what I should read and what I shouldn't read, and they were doing that over the course of my finishing the series. So I've read a number of these. But yeah, it definitely, it ties that together. He talks about the Seven Samurai and Magnificent Seven, right, which is obviously informing his process. So
Right.
Again, it's fun. I think it's interesting, but I think that's about all there is to it.
Yeah. Yeah, just a bit of a wink.
Yeah, bit of a wank.
All right, well,
That's Song of Susannah.
that's it.
That's it.
Let me say hi to new patrons real quick, guys.
We got one more book left.
Can't believe this, but the last one's a biggin', so.
Yeah, it is.
So, this week, new patrons, Monica King, Jessica, Taylor Snellenberger, Melissa Coons, Ashley Munetzi, Rachel, Luis Alfonso Villaseñor Olvera. I love that.
Nice.
And Abby Rosales all became patrons this past week. So welcome all of you. Thank you all so much for pledging. Make sure to join the patrons only Facebook page because there's so much happening. And also, guys, everybody, not just patrons, sign up for the Unspoiled newsletter because I get a lot of repeat questions on stuff that I have said on so many different podcasts, that I have tweeted, that I have posted on Facebook. And the main reason, okay, if I said it on the podcast, that's straight up your fault. There's not much I can do about that. I said that shit. I said it many times. If you missed it, that's on you. I can't help you. But when it's on Twitter or on Facebook, there are a lot of algorithms at play now. Even on Twitter, which used to just be, things got showed to you in the order they were posted. It's not like that anymore. So there are a lot of things that I'll post and you won't necessarily see. If you want a direct link with me where I can tell you straight up what's going on and what's coming up and what is getting changed and all that good stuff, sign up for the newsletter. Go to unspoiledpodcast.com and there is a subscribe button and you sign up for that shit, you'll get it. And I'm really excited about it because I haven't done a lot of newsletters in the past, but I think that this will be a better way to connect with people as Facebook becomes less and less usable for smaller businesses that can't afford to boost every single post we make. And I feel like it's kind of empowering to be able to have a subscriber list that I can communicate with directly without needing a third-party platform for it, except for MailChimp, I guess. So yeah, y'all get on that and sign up for it. And I just posted and pinned to the top of the Unspoiled Facebook page the most recent one, in which I get into details about what's going on with Harry Potter, Westworld Season 2, Legion Season 2, Jessica Jones Season 2. There are a lot of different shows that I started that are going to be coming back around. And I just wanted to let you all know how I plan on covering those and, when that's going to be happening. So check out the pinned post on facebook.com/unspoiledpod. You can find me on Twitter at Unspoiled Show, Instagram at Unspoiled Podcast. And I think that's everything. And if you want to become a patron, patreon.com/unspoiled. Sir, take it away.
Guys, you can find all my stuff on www.mjschneiderman.com. That takes you to... Shit. It takes you to a webpage where there are links to other web pages, because that's how the internet works. And so mjschneiderman.com is the place to go for everything that I do. You should check out the Smash Fiction podcast, as well as the Odyssey Storytelling podcast, as well as the Universes of the Mind blog, universesofthemind.com. And again, you can find all of that on mjschneiderman.com.
Damn.
Right? Hasn't it already made things easier?
It was short, and you finished it in a spot that really felt like that was the end of the sentence.
Yeah.
I'm really proud of you right now.
Right? I know.
Go
I feel like
you.
I felt like I kind of started this episode without the ability to express myself clearly, and I came back around to the end to expressing myself perhaps more clearly than I have ever done before. So, yay.
Yay!
Real quick note, since we're starting the final volume of the Dark Tower, well, I should say, no, it's the final volume, it's just not necessarily the last volume. But Book 7 of the Dark Tower, which is called The Dark Tower. These are really short chapters for the most part.
Okay.
So I'm thinking we can try the first two, and we'll see if that's enough for one episode. Does that sound
Okay.
all right?
Yeah.
All
If
right.
you think that's the way to go, then
I'm
yes.
looking at it, and I think it just might be.
All right. Well, then let's do it. I haven't even downloaded it yet, so gonna have to get on that.
I'm only wondering if we should do the first three, because like they're that short, especially at the beginning. Let me see where these end real quick. But
All right.
anyway,
Well, let's say the first two for now, and then if you decide on three, I'll let people know.
you know, I'm gonna say let's fuck it. First three, let's do it.
First three. Okay.
First three chapters of the Dark Tower next week.
Noted. All right, sir. Well, I can't believe we're getting on the last book here. God damn.
Here we go. This has been literally years in the making.
It has been. Thank you all so much for listening. We love you. Please leave a review on iTunes if you've been enjoying the show. And we will see you next week with the beginning of Book 7. Toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.